The real goal of investing is to spend $1 and get $2 back, but you won't ever get to that point unless you completely, fully, totally understand what Albert Einstein called the most powerful force in the universe. And at the end of this video, I'm going to walk you through a real life example of how you can apply this to yourself. So one day over 1,000 years ago, there was a king in India who decided to host a competition. This competition was open to anyone, and he was a well-known man, but he was best known for two things. Number one, his wealth, and number two, his generosity. He was just an overall good dude. The only thing is, he didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but lately he had just gotten bored, so he was looking for something amazing, exciting, new. It really didn't matter, he just didn't want to be bored anymore. So to make sure that as many people as possible could join this competition, the king only had one rule, and the reward was a surprise. He was a wealthy and generous man, so a surprise reward was well worth the shot. Anyways, his one rule was, bring me something amazing, exciting, and or new. That's it, he was getting really desperate. As expected, word of the king's competition reached everyone and their mothers, so the competition lasted weeks. The line to get into the palace stretched miles and miles, and one after the other, each competitor presented the king with what they thought was amazing, exciting, or new. But none of it piqued his interest, and he was ready to shut down the competition out of pure boredom and a hint of disappointment. However, as he was ready to tell everyone to just go home, his main guard told him there were only enough contestants to last one more day. It's always that last day, so he just let it go on. As he reaches the very last contestant, he sits there still bored, and this lowly little peasant man walks into his throne room carrying a wooden board in his arm and a leather pouch slung across his body. Just as everyone else, the peasant presents the king with an item. It was a game he invented for and played with all his younger siblings, a game we know as chess. He showed them all the pieces and how to play, so they played a couple of games, and to everyone's surprise, the king was no longer bored, and he just fell absolutely in love with the game. Immediately after the games, the king offered the peasant his surprise reward. Allow me to keep this game here in my palace, and I will give you any treasure or prize you wish. Just name your price. Now, he was a peasant, but he was no fool. He had no desire for gold or jewelry or even a palace. He just wanted his family to be happy and healthy. He was a simple man. So he thought about it for a second, and he decided, my king, I don't want your gold or even your kingdom. I just need food for my family. And since you love this game so much, I only ask that you place 1 grain of rice on the first square of the board, and then double it to the next, and the next, and the next, until we reach day 64. And the king was amazed. He thought he was going to have to give away buckets of gold, and he actually wanted to, but he agreed to what he thought would cost him pretty much nothing. It was just rice. The king rewarded the man with his 1 grain of rice on day 1, then 2 on day 2, and then 4 on day 3, and so on and so on. It doubled each day, and for the next several days, the king had no problem, but what the king did not realize when he made this agreement was that after day 20, he would owe the man over 1 million grains of rice, and after day 30, over 1 billion grains of rice. He was known for his generosity and his wealth, but clearly not for his brains. You see, the peasant understood a concept the king did not, and he demonstrated what Albert Einstein called the most powerful force in the universe and also deemed it the 8th wonder of the world. This is compound interest. What the peasant understood was that if you can start with anything, even if it's very tiny, and allow it to grow and reinvest that growth for slightly more growth and consistently do that over time, you will eventually experience the rewards of compounded interest, which is really just growth used towards creating more growth. This simple principle of growth becoming more growth is what allows the rich to continue getting richer. And one of the very few reasons the poor stay poor is because the poor never learn how to spend $1 and get $2 back. Now the question is, how does this apply to you? Well, there is no investment that will double for you each day like it did for the peasant, but that is where the rule of 72 comes into play. When you take the number 72 and divide it by your expected rate of return, you will get a good estimation of how long it will take your investment to double in years. Here's an example. If you had $1,000 and did your research and found that a certain investment would give you back 10% per year, you would use the rule of 72 formula and plug in the 10% as a whole number. So now you have t, which is time, equals 72 over 10. And if you do some quick math, that equals 7.2. This is telling you that your $1,000 investment would become $2,000 in about 7.2 years. And that's not very significant, but let's use the same formula in a different way and then look at a more realistic example. To keep things simple, we'll stick with the $1,000 investment, except this time you haven't done your research yet, you're just trying to find what you should go out and look for. So you have your $1,000 investment, but this time you've decided you want to double it in 2 years instead of 7.2 years. You can use the same formula t equals 72 over r. You already have 2 because you've already decided you want to double your investment in 2 years. So you plug that 2 into the formula and do some quick algebra that I'm not going to show on screen. But now your formula says r equals 72 over 2, which equals 36. And now you know that if you want to spend $1,000 and get $2,000 back in 2 years, you need to find an investment that will give you a 36% rate of return. That's a big rate of return, and it's definitely possible, but probably not in the stock market. However, just by holding an investment just for 2 years, you're not going to experience the true power of the eighth wonder of the world. Because as the peasant showed us, that takes consistency and time. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that looks like. Remember, on day 2, he would have only been owed 2 grains of rice, but because he gave it time, on day 21, which for us would be year 21, but because he gave it time, he would have been owed 1,048,576 grains of rice. And on day 31, just a 10 days difference because of time, he would have been owed 1,073,741,824 grains of rice. And I'm not going to go over every day in between, but on the last day, day 64, the king would have owed him a number that I actually had to look up how to pronounce. It would have been 9,223,372,336,854,780,000 grains of rice. The king will never be able to pay that amount of rice. That amount of rice has not existed since the dawn of time, but let's look at a real example. SPY, SPY, it's an ETF, which is pretty much a stock on steroids, and you can find it on pretty much any brokerage. I haven't seen one that doesn't offer it. Anyway, SPY has an average annualized return of about 11.88% since its inception. And if you use the rule of 72, if you just bought it and hold it and that's it, it would take you about 6 years to double your money. So we already know that our 11.88% would double our investment in about 6 years. But to experience that compounded growth, we're going to add consistency and time, right? So we're going to make our initial investment and then add our consistency by making additional contributions over a period of time. And just to show you that the rule of 72 is actually a good estimator, if we start with $1,000 for 6 years, the 6 came from the rule of 72, and then have a rate of return of 11.88%, our investment would be a little over $2,000. So now you know it works, but let's add that consistency. With the same exact numbers, all we're going to do is add an extra monthly contribution of just $250. Your investment went from a little more than $2,000 at the end of 6 years to over $28,000 in the same amount of time. That's only 6 years with an additional $250 per month, and if you have a job, that's not actually that much. But you're already seeing the power of that compounded growth, and we haven't even added the time yet. Let's do that now. Again, the same exact numbers, but we're just going to double the years. And before I actually show you, most people would just assume, oh, we doubled the years, so my investment's just going to double, obviously. Let's see. With the same exact numbers, but for 12 years instead of 6, your investment did not just double. It quadrupled from $28,000 to almost $84,000. And when you're thinking long-term, 12 years is not even a lot. So just for fun, let's up the years to a more realistic 35 years. Your investment is now worth over $1.6 million. And I could keep going on and on, but I'm sure you get it now. Consistency and time is what it takes to build real wealth, and now you have the tools to go and find your own investment to spend $1 and get $2 back. And before you go, if you want help with that, or if you just want to learn more about your investing options, there's a link just for you down below. It's a form that'll take you like 5 seconds to complete, and it's completely free, so go check it out.